Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today. I have got Moto Hub in Castle Hills Ninja 1000 SX demo bike today for a quick test. This is particularly a quick test because being a sports touring machine, obviously it'd be ideal to do like 500,000 kilometers on it, but that's not a possibility today. But with that said, I'm going to give my quick impressions on this particular bike. Obviously, I've tested the ZH2 and the Ninja ZX10 recently. This is a very different machine. You're still getting that beautiful inline 4-cylinder engine, but differently tuned. And I will say, probably one of the sportiest aspects of this particular bike, perhaps apart from the looks themselves, because it's got a very aggressive fairing on it, is that engine. Now, it's got a couple of modes, but the thing that I really have to stress is that road mode, beautifully smooth. I think doing any kind of riding, even everyday riding on this bike is going to be a joy. With road mode, it's just smooth. You know, in traffic, the throttle on and off is beautiful. Those transitions, the transition onto engine braking, really, really good. When you knock it into sports mode, when you're out on the open roads like this, that's really where you're going to appreciate that. I found sports mode a little bit rough for kind of the around town style riding. So, you know, realistically speaking, that's a nice compromise. Have your sport mode for when you get out into the twisties, have your road mode for your more general and more relaxed riding, keeping in mind that a lot of people are going to have a pillion on the back of one of these bikes, and there's heaps and heaps of power to do that. I didn't have a pillion today, unfortunately. It's a midweek test. However, I will say, I think from the looks of it, there's going to be a good amount of room for a pillion. You've got a generous seat on the back, you've got a generous reach to those pegs. I will say it's not like full touring. Even I found that seat to peg ratio on the sporty side of things. I keep my weight through those pegs quite naturally, even just with the arches of my feet on the pegs. I'm not getting the balls of my feet up on the pegs for the normal riding, obviously. And in those conditions, yeah, I found that ratio between the seat and the pegs on the sporty side of things. Whereas in comparison, the reach to the bars, they're nice raised bars, they're quite wide. That is much, much more relaxed, and that's going to be ideal for doing longer distances. Obviously, you're not really as inclined to really crouch in, and there's quite a tall tank on the bike as well, but there's really good wind protection from that screen. Apparently, it's an adjustable screen. I haven't actually figured out. It's a little... I've just figured it out. There's just a little latch there, and you knock it up or down. Which is interesting because it did look like it was adjustable, but I was actually looking in the electronic system to figure out how to do that. So that's my mistake. This is in the utmost position, which is what I had it in originally when I picked up the bike, and there's good wind protection. I was getting most of the wind just to the top of my helmet, which ideally, it's nice if it goes over you, but you need a lot of wind protection to do that, or you need to be picking up your speeds considerably more, which is probably going to be a possibility in some situations on the highway, but you know, it does vary greatly. Talking about the bike in general, adjustable suspension front and rear, nice front end setup, well adjusted. One point of note I will make is that the previous Ninja 1000, the previous generation, had quite a unusual kind of handling characteristic to it that some people didn't like. To be honest, when I rode the bike, I just rode around it. I think the new Ninja 1000 has a much kind of just more traditional handling characteristic to it. I will say, for whatever reason, I just felt like the weight balance was towards the rear of the bike. The front end is quite light. And that's not to say it's lifting or anything like that. It's just the way the bike felt to me was a little bit more rear inclined, which kind of reminds me of the old ZX10 back in 2013, which had that same kind of feel to it. But I did like that on the ZX10. Adjustable suspension, external preload adjuster. I actually found that the rear was pogoing a little bit for me, and I've just put a bit more preload on, and that's mainly solved the issue. So I do think probably this bike in particular would benefit from me messing around with the suspension a fair bit more to get it more suited to me, because, you know, I'm only 70 kilos with gear and then my camera bag and stuff like that. And being a sports touring bike, it's probably been set up to carry a heavier rider or two upriders, because, you know, there's a lot of compromises that have to be made. The nimbleness at low speeds, really, really good. It's a very, very manageable machine. You don't feel the weight of the machine at all. As I said, the throttle response, chuck it in road mode, it is beautiful. It's really, really nice. If you knock it up too many gears, obviously you'll start to lose that nice power pickup, but it's still smooth. It just takes a little while to kind of reel up to speed and to start getting into that more punchy, you know, inline four kind of characteristic, because at the end of the day, that's what an inline four is. It doesn't quite have, you know, that low down torque or punch of a twin, but it's got that beautiful revvy linear power delivery, which just keeps building, and that's certainly the case on this particular machine. Brakes, nice and powerful. I'm only using 2 fingers on those front brakes. The lever's a tiny little bit spongy, I will note, but overall I thought the amount of power there was good. I wouldn't really be looking for superbike level brakes on a machine like this. I'd be pretty happy with this setup, but if you're someone who wants that kind of track level bite, you'll probably not be particularly happy with the feel of the lever, even though I think the power is really good. And as I said, there's not a heap of bite, but there's really good power. Adjustable lever, you do have a Nissan Radial Master cylinder, you've got those Kawasaki 4-piston calipers as well, so it's a nice braking system, but it's not like a super top-end braking system. And as I said, I think well balanced for the bike. If you're really getting into the sporty side of things, then perhaps you might want to get some braided lines on the bike, maybe change the pads for something with a little bit more bite. The rear brake, good little bit of power on that, which means that, you know, through the twisties, using a little bit of rear brake to control your speed and for a bit of stability, very easy. Around town, you know, at low speeds, you can use that rear brake to stop. There's enough power there, which again, that's kind of my preference. I like that kind of balance between the front and the rear as far as the brakes. That's just me. Integrated luggage on the rear. The luggage is not standard. That's the panniers, and I'm sure you can get a top box as well. Nice to see that being easily fitted. As far as the ergonomics of the bike, it's an interesting mix. I actually found the seat to peg ratio very much put my weight through my legs, which is something that I do like. It's not a really stretched out, you know, tall tourer, but that keeps you engaged with the bike. And that was with the arches of my feet on those pegs, not getting my balls of my feet up on the pegs when I was getting a bit more sporty. That was just regular riding. I think you're probably looking at a fairly similar peg to seat ratio for your pillion. You know, nice, but not like super stretched out. In comparison, the bars are like super relaxed. They're on, you know, risers. They've got a bit of angle back towards the rider, very natural feeling, kept me very upright on the bike. I would have said, you know, from an upper torso perspective and from a back, like spinal perspective, nice upright back, very relaxed reach to those bars, slightly sportier as far as that seat to peg ratio. There's a nice clear TFT display on the front. The actual electronics are, I mean, there's a good level of electronics on it. You've got your ride modes, you have got your traction control, very simply controlled. You can get your mobile phone synced up to the computer system as well, which is also, you know, nice little thing to see. You've got cruise control, which is probably going to be one of the big boons on a longer distance bike like this. You've got adjustable levers as well. And accessing that computer is really as simple as you could ask for. Keeping in mind, I think this is really the kind of electronic system which is going to appeal to somebody who doesn't want to be able to look through 50 different settings and all that kind of stuff. You can set up the rider mode for you. You've got road, you've got sport, you've got rain, and there's a difference between road and sport, certainly, which is something that I really noticed riding the bike and I really appreciated. And I've got to say, it's just the kind of bike where if the conditions are varying a little bit, if I get out into the nice sporty stuff, I'll be in sport mode. If I'm in the city, if I'm doing commuting, if I'm doing the regular riding, I'll probably put it in road because it's smoother. I might put it in rain, but to be honest, the way the power delivery starts on this inline four, nice and gentle down low, it'd have to be pretty slippery or, you know, with someone on the rear for me to probably put it into that rain mode. It's got S22 tires as well, nice kind of sports touring tire that is going to be ideal for the wet and the dry. I was running the old S21s on my Daytona and I was always really happy with that because it was that ideal compromise, a sporty tire but still a great tire in the wet, which is what I always look for. Other points of note, Nice wide mirrors to give you plenty of vision behind you. The front bodywork of this bike is pretty hefty. It very much has that full, really tourer feel to it. It's got a nice aggressive fairing on the front end of things. Quite sporty as far as that. It's kind of the older style front headlight. It's got almost like a feline, very angular style to it, where they've updated the ZX10 and it's kind of, you know, morphed on since then, but I reckon it looks really, really nice. Finish quality is good. There is, you know, some plastics on the inner panels here, but those are matched to the triple and the bars, which I think, you know, nice attention to detail, nice finish quality overall. It does have this massive exhaust on it, but it's got a nice burble to it when you start it up. It's not super loud, but you know, a nice enough exhaust, even if it is quite a large exhaust. I have no doubt putting a nicer aftermarket system on it is definitely going to improve that and clear up that rear of the bike a little bit, but that's something that you got to decide about doing. There's a couple of details, like it's a little bit busy around the back of the bike here. That mounting point for the exhaust and everything like that is not the nicest looking, but obviously they had to stick it on somewhere, and so that's where they've done it. It's got a nice, relatively clean set of blinkers on the rear, but it does have this massive fender. Probably if you're doing a lot of touring, you're not going to be taking that off because you're going to get a lot of fling off the road up onto you, which is never a good thing when you're doing really big Ks. I will also point out that these are 19 on road. I believe it's 18.8 for the solid black. The paint on this has got a beautiful deep fleck in it, really, really nice. Like in the sunlight, it really jumps out at you. Unfortunately, we've got clouds now, so you're not going to see that. Maybe in some of the footage I took earlier when it was a bit sunnier, but you know, the paint quality is really, really nice. But back to price, as I was saying, so this is significantly cheaper than the ZH2, and I'd probably say the suspension and to a lesser extent the brakes was where I noticed that most, but 19 grand on the road for a sports tourer like this I think is really good value. As a lot of these sports touring machines are heading up towards that 25, even 30k mark, I think this is a really good value option. It's got that beautiful TFT display, adjustable dash, radial master cylinder, good set of brakes, nothing too crazy. It's got the electronics that you'd want, but again, nothing too crazy. Nice large tank, very, very comfortable, beautiful sporty edge to it, and overall just a really ideal machine if you're not looking to spend huge sums of money to do your touring and you still want a sporty and, you know, realistically a very good everyday bike. And of course it feels like a light, nimble machine. It doesn't feel as heavy as some of those bigger sports touring or more touring style bikes, which, you know, that's what these bikes have done well. They're very much, you know, kind of the interpretation of the ZX10 if you were looking for a sports tourer, and they've done a great job with it. One thing I forgot to mention is this has the quickshifter. It has the up and down quickshifter. Now, initial impressions of the quickshifter, I was really enamored. I really loved it, especially with the engine and the road mode, because what I could do is I just use the quickshifter, and that's up and down, and I was just using that and really basically having a heap of fun by just, you know, it doesn't give it an auto mode because you're still manually changing the gears, but you know, the beautiful blip on the downshifts, really super smooth on the upshifts, really, really good. Anyway, that's my overall thoughts on the Ninja 1000 SX. This is, as I said, Moto Hub at Castle Hill's demo bike. You can head in, test ride this machine, see if you like it. I definitely recommend checking it out. I think it's a great value sports touring machine, nice blend of sports and touring, and a great overall machine that's a real looker with those full fairings. If you've liked the video, don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Would you buy one of these bikes? Have you bought one of these bikes? I'll be back soon. Stay safe out there.